This is going to be a hot topic about the future of flight simulation. Not something that most flight simmers and developers want to talk about or admit to. So stay tuned. So pull up a chair, gather around, grab you a cup of coffee, light you a cigarette, whatever. But we need to have us a talk, wake some people up. Because originally I was going to try to hold some kind of a online discussion about this to see how other flight simmers and developers across the spectrum thought. Now, my original intention was to put my video camera on a tripod, have it pointing at me, and I sit here and ramble on about the future of flight simulation. But I'm not real big about being in front of the camera, and I'd just soon put up some photos and let you listen to what I'm going to tell you, because it's something for everybody needs to think about. Everybody, from flight sim pilots to developers. But that's me, that's what I look like. I'm Captain Patroni, or Jet Ranger, whatever you want to call me. And that's me. That's who I am. So, give you an idea, you're not dealing with some punk kid here, but let's get into what I want to talk about here. Now, I've been flight simming since 2002 with the professional edition of Flight Simulator 2002. That's when I got into it. And I dove into it pretty hard. And I've watched it blossom over the years to its infancy when it was at its height. From 2002, basically, when the Pro Edition came out, a flight simulator, all the way up to about 2012, 2010, somewhere around there. Those were the years it was in its infancy. And I've seen some changes. I've seen some good changes. I've seen some developers quit, go out of business. A lot of people get out of it, flight simulator, because it was too expensive. And they just lost interest in it. After a while, you can only bore around in the flight sim skies for so long, and all the scenery kind of looks the same. Since 2002, I've watched some aircraft developers get old and die. I've watched others go out of business because it wasn't sustainable anymore. And I've watched a lot of changes take place in the flight sim community since 2002, both good and bad. And I think this Pre-Par 3D version 4 is a good idea. What concerns me is in the future, with more versions, how is that going to render us sim pilots and freeware developers and payware developers, how's that going to render us? In other words, are we going to have to redo everything again, and all this stuff that we have now for pre-par version 3D version 4.4, is it going to be useless because they've come out in 3 to 5 years with a new version? So all this stuff that we're buying now, rebuying, repurchasing from these developers, aircraft developers and scenery developers, for Pre-Par 3D version 4, is it going to be useless in 3 to 5 years because they've come out with a newer version now? I mean, it's something to think about. Now, I don't know about the rest of you sim pilots out there, but I just don't have the money to go out and buy a new computer every 3 to 5 years and drop $1,500, $2,000 to upgrade my computer, plus repurchase all the software and all the aircraft and scenery that I had to replace what I had because they've come out with a new version. Now, I don't know about some of you out there, but I got other priorities besides this flight simulator. I own a home, and it requires maintenance and work. I don't mind buying some of these products from these developers, aircraft developers like Coronado and Lionheart Creations and PMDG and Albeo and Just Flight and commercial level simulations, but there's got to be a fine line drawn here somewhere, because I can't go and just repurchase all these products every 3 years or 5 years just because they've come out with a new version and it renders our software that we have now useless, because they're not putting out any support, the developers, for the products and the versions of Flight Simulator that we had prior. Now, granted, as time goes on and the future changes, things get better, but I can't really see where some of this is. I mean, it's getting to the point where, I mean, they came out with Pre-Par 3D version 1, then version 2, and then version 3, but those were 32-bit formats. Well, then they've come out with this 64-bit format, Pre-Par version 3D version 4, which is a 64-bit format. I'm just wondering what's going to be next, because a lot of this stuff that's 32-bit won't work with 64-bit, and work, as I'm getting ready to show you. You can't just put it into 64-bit without having an unstable sim. Crash to desktop. Some of the stuff won't even work. The gauges, and who knows if the landing gear and the lights will work, and some of the dynamic lighting at the airports. And so what we're doing here is we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. I think we need to stand back and stop a minute. I mean, this has got to be it, developers. Y'all's going to have a meeting, a conference, or something with Lockheed Martin and say, hey, any more than this, we're going to start losing people. When we've already lost a good, significant number of people just through the age of Flight Simulator. They've gotten old. They passed away. I can think of like that Gary Smith. There's a guy that, you know, I don't know how old Milton Shoup is. He's got to be getting up there to the point where, you know, we've already lost the original founder of Absim a few years ago. You know, we're all getting old. And you younger folks are going to, as time goes on, your lives are going to get more complicated, and you're not going to have time for this. And this is going to become a thing of the past, you know. I'm not flight simming as much as I used to back 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. I just don't have time for it. Only in the winter time do I really have any time to get into flight simming, from about the 1st of November till about the 1st of May. The rest of the year, the summer, I'm busy with my yard and my house and working, and I just don't have time for this. The winter time is the only time I got time to do it. But what's going to happen, what I see happening is the younger simmers are going to get older, and they're going to wane off of this, and it's going to become less interesting to them and too expensive, as some of them buy homes, or maybe they already own a home, but things break down, and they just don't have $70 or $100, $200 to throw around on software, scenery, and aircraft. They got a refrigerator needs to be replaced, maybe a roof's leaking, they got to buy a car, medical things come up. And I'm looking at some aircraft now that I wouldn't have thought this was at all possible back in 2002, 2005, but you'd see $50, $70, $100 aircraft. Sceneries that are $40, $50, $60. And I understand, you know, they got to charge money to pay for the software to develop that stuff, as well as for their time. Because it's time consuming. It ain't just push a button and presto, this shit cranks out. You just don't crank out an airplane in 5 minutes by pushing a key on your keyboard or a scenery. It takes a lot of work, a lot of knowledge, a lot of computer power, and to buy that computer power takes money. So they're trying to recoup. I don't really think any of them are getting rich off this. They're just recuperating their money that they invested in computers and software to develop this stuff for us flight simmers, all these aircraft, whether it's Albeo or Coronado or PMDG or Captain Sim or even some of these freeware developers. They do it because they love the hobby. And just like we love flying. But it's getting to the point where guys, and when I say guys, I'm talking about sim pilots, developers, aircraft developers, and scenery developers. We're going to have to draw a line here somewhere. Otherwise, flight simming is going to go totally downhill pretty quick. There won't be enough people to support the developers. They're going to quit doing it because they ain't making any money. And when their computers break down and they don't have the money, they're not going to be running out buying computers and software to develop products that they ain't making any money with because nobody's doing it. It's a niche hobby is what it is. And it's going to get down to where there's only 100, 150 people left around the world that are even messing with this here in the future. If things keep going the way they're going, I've watched a big significant drop in flight simming and in general, the forum boards all over, and from Simvation to FlightSim.com to AbSim. It's not, the boards aren't nowhere near as heavy posting screenshots and of their aircraft and scenery like they used to be. And the videos I'm seeing out there, they're here today, gone tomorrow simmers. Maybe they're around for 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, then they fall off. I've already witnessed 4 or 5 flight simmers that they were real good at making videos for a year or two. And when I go back to their channel page, they haven't posted a video in over a year, maybe 2 years, or even longer. I don't know if they were in an accident and died. I don't know if they had a heart attack. Who knows? Maybe they just got bored with flight simming. It's time consuming to make these videos, and most of them aren't that great. A lot of the music behind them sucks. It just takes a lot of work to produce a decent video to hold your interest. Lord knows my videos are not that great. I'm the last person that should be talking, but I'm just saying, most of them I click on, I zip through them, and they ain't worth watching. But the flight sim community is getting off track from what it used to be. It's becoming extremely expensive, not just in buying aircraft and scenery, but the computers to keep up with all these great graphics and sounds and all this other software that we got to have, and hardware from track IR to throttle quadrants to yokes. Screens have gotten way bigger and a lot better, and they're not cheap. These great big huge flat screens, and when you got 2 or 3 of them, 4 of them, you're talking several $1,000s. And then you add in all the software, the aircraft and scenery at $40, $50, $60, $70 per aircraft, $30, $40, $50 per scenery. When you start adding all this up with all your computers, and it's getting to the point where this hobby's going to start dying out, and there aren't enough wealthy people out there that are into this, as heavy as some of us are, to support it. I don't know how many people out there know that, but Just Flight almost went out of business a couple of years ago. They were looking at having to shut the doors, is what I read through PC Magazine. So, and I've already seen several developers close up shop. They couldn't keep up with the new programs, trying to figure it all out, and their family life too. These people aren't just sitting around day and night with nothing to do. They got to make money to pay bills. And I just don't see where there's going to be enough of us out there to support this much longer. I've already seen a big significant drop in flight simming compared to what it was. So this Lockheed Martin coming out with, I hope you're listening to this, along with PMDG's Robert Randazzo and Coronado and Albeo and Captain Sim and Lionheart Creations and some freeware developers, because if things don't change and they're going to come out with a different version of for Flight Simulator every 3 to 5 years, and it's going to render what we have now useless, and we're going to have to repurchase everything and rebuy everything and upgrade our computers even more, you're going to see a big, huge drop-off in flight simulation, or it could just totally die out. People just can't afford it. And they're not going to keep repurchasing all this stuff. They're going to move on to another hobby. And it's not just repurchasing it and the financial aspect of it. It's the time it takes to reload all this into your computer, all the aircraft, all the scenery, set it up, tweak it, all the other software you got to go in and recalibrate and we're not talking 30 minutes here or even an hour. We're talking days, sometimes even weeks and weeks of reloading all this in our computer, getting it all set up right, tweaking it, calibrating it, on top of the expense. I mean, if I were to reload once I get my new computer, reload everything that I've had and retweak it and recalibrate it, we're looking at, if I really put forth an effort to it, I could do it in 3 to 4 weeks, working 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's where I'm at. That's why you don't see any videos on my YouTube channel right now. This is a brand new YouTube channel. I canceled out my other one. I got pissed off. I had like 400 or 500 subscribers. Had about 170, 180 videos. But I canceled it out. Said to hell with it. And I don't know if I'm going to get back into it or not. I'd like to, just a little bit, but nowhere near as heavy as I did. But I'm debating to, because I don't want to invest all this money into this pre-par 3D version 4.4 and all the aircraft and all the scenery to go back. I'm going to have to repurchase a lot of it, because what I've got won't work in pre-par 3D version 4, supposedly. And I really don't want to find out and have a bunch of crashed desktops and my flight simulator unstable. So we're talking a huge expense here, and I'm getting old. I'm not some 20-year-old kid, and most 20-year-old kids don't have this kind of money. But we're talking about dropping another $4,000, $5,000 almost between the new computers, the new software, all the aircraft and scenery to replace what I had. Hopefully I won't have to go out and buy any new yokes or throttle quadrants. I can still use my SATEC stuff. I don't know. But I'm getting to the point where this is getting to be way out of hand. And if Lockheed Martin, if you're listening, if you come out with any more versions other than the upgrades to the current pre-par 3D version 4, you're not only going to lose me, and I've spent, on an average, if I look at how much money I spent a year, I spent at least every year on scenery and aircraft around $250 to $300 a year, just on aircraft and scenery. Whether it was through that sim place, I don't remember the name of the website I even buy the scenery from, or Aerosoft, or wherever. A lot of Captain Sim, a lot of Coronado and Albeo aircraft I had, some commercial level simulations. It's getting to the point where we need to stand back and say, hey, because if we don't, there ain't going to be any flight simming in the future. What we have is what we have, and when it quits working and goes kerplunk, that's it. Think about that. So if Lockheed Martin's going to keep doing this, in 3 years they come out with a new version that renders all of our stuff that we have now that we're updating and repurchasing and buying useless, you can look forward to not having flight simming in your venue again, because it's going to be for big corporations that have a lot of money. It ain't going to be for us folks at home that are at our homes in the bedroom or in the basement or in the garage or wherever, because we ain't going to be able to afford it. We just can't keep redoing this, our sims, and repurchasing all these products. It just ain't going to happen. So any changes to Pre-Par 3D version 4, hopefully they're upgrades that won't render any of our aircraft and scenery useless, and our hardware, yokes and throttle quadrants and rudder pedals, track IR, and our cameras. There's 2 different cameras out there now for your sim that you can use. It's just getting to the point where it's becoming super unaffordable and unsustainable. My theory is, and I don't know if this can be done or not, I may not know what I'm talking about, that if we already have bought a product, for instance, say Coronado or Albeo, Captain Sim, or Commercial Level Simulations or Lionheart Creation, I don't know what's involved in making the prior aircraft and scenery compatible with Pre-Par 3D version 4, how much work is involved in it. And I don't know. It'd be nice if we got a discount, being we're already registered and logged in and a user. Somehow if we could get a discount on some of these aircraft and sceneries that we're buying, for that we need to change over to Pre-Par 3D version 4, instead of just having to rebuy the whole product at the regular price. So, I mean, it's gotten to the point where I'm not going to be flight simming much longer. If I'm almost afraid to dive back into this, because about the time I dive back into it, spend all this money and spend copious amounts of time reloading all this and tweaking it. We're not talking about just 1 or 2 airplanes or 2 or 3 sceneries here. My previous setup in my simulator, FSX, Gold Acceleration, I had almost 470 payware add-on sceneries, just payware sceneries, over the years. I had an additional 150 freeware sceneries I had found on the internet through Simvation, FlightSim.com, AbSim, and some other websites from independent developers. Another 150. All that takes time to load into your computer and download and break them down out of the zip files, and you know the story. Aircraft that I had. Unreal how much aircraft I had on a separate hard drive, not in my sim. I separated them. I had almost 8,000 aircraft in my sim. 8,000. Well, not in my sim, but for my simulator. I should say for my simulator. Most of them were kept on an external hard drive. I still have them. I had roughly 220 aircraft, jets and props, because I like to fly the older jets and the older props, in my sim at any given time. About 220. L-1011, 707, 737s with Captain Sims, 747s of PMDGs, commercial level simulations, Lionheart Creations, Bill over there at Lionheart Creations. I was real fond of his past Skylark. But guys, all that stuff's going to be useless once I buy Pre-Par 3D version 4. I think it's probably a good thing. I'm not knocking it. What's sad is how much aircraft and scenery, quality scenery, some of it was freeware that some guy had put out in God knows what part of the world and blew some of the payware developers away with his freeware scenery. I can't replace it because it won't be compatible with Prepar 3D version 4. It was awesome scenery. I hate to lose it. So I may just go back with FSX boxed version and say the hell with it. But there's got to be a fine line drawn here on how many versions of Prepar 3D version whatever shit they're going to roll out, because this ain't going to work. I'm telling you right now, it is not going to work. You're going to kill the flight sim community if you keep coming out with new versions every 3 to 5 years that renders everything that we have now useless. And in 3 to 5 years, we all race out and buy whatever, and then another 3 to 5 years, you come out with, roll out some other version that renders all that useless. And so you're chasing your tail. It's a merry-go-round. It's I don't know, maybe Frugal Sim and Robert Randazzo and some of you Marshall Abateman and Mark McDavies and some of you guys out there could that have YouTube flight simulator YouTube channels. I know Frugal Sim's real big. Maybe he could weigh in on this, but I'm just saying that this is getting out of hand. I mean, we're looking at aircraft now that are, some are decent quality, but I never would have thought this was possible. I mean, we're looking at $40, $50, $70, $100 aircraft. And it's getting out of hand. I got to take a drink. But somewhere or another, we got to draw the line, because it's getting totally out of hand. And I don't mean just the prices of aircraft and scenery. These versions, I don't mind shucking out a little money. What bothers me is I do it, and then 6 months, a year down the road, oh, they rolled out a new version of a sim. Now all my stuff, I've got to keep it or switch over, and I lose everything I've got. That's the issue. I don't mind buying this stuff, but I'm not going to lose it every time you roll out a new version of some simulator. And about the time they decide they're going to stay with one platform, you can just about bank Microsoft's going to roll out some new version of an operating system that's going to render even more of our shit useless. You know, Windows 10 and what was that other version, Vista, that didn't do anybody any favors. I wish they would have just stayed with Windows 7 and stayed with that platform and perfected it. But you know, if we ain't got that to worry about, all these developers or the Lockheed Martin coming out with a new version, then we got to worry about Microsoft rolling out some version of an operating system that'll totally render everything we've got useless, which wouldn't surprise me. I'm about sick of Microsoft, to be honest with you. But all right, well, that's my rant. I would, if you get this video, my channel's not very big because it's brand new and I just started it back up again. My other channel that I used to have had about 400 or 500 subscribers, and I had about 130 videos. And but I'd like to hear your opinion, your comment. I mean, think about it. Look at where we're at now. Look where we were at. Look where we're at now. Look where we're going. What's to keep a repeat in the future from going through what we've already went through? Everything we got's useless. We got to switch over to a new venue, a new format, because somebody's rolled out something different. Now everything we just went and bought in 2017, 2018, and 2019 is basically worthless, because they've rolled out a new format, a new venue of a sim. Where's that going to leave us all? How much money are we all going to be out? Before you just throw your hands up in the air and say, well, it was fun while it lasted. Boy, am I out a lot of money. And time. The time it takes to download this stuff, break it down out of the zip file. We're not talking about 1 or 2 files here. And inject it into your sim and do it right so it works. Because it's not just a simple click and download and you're presto, good to go. It takes some effort. You got to be well organized to make these flight simulators work. It's not some video game. If you're not well organized and have your shit organized in your simulator, and you just put stuff anywhere, then your stuff ain't going to work right, and your sim's going to be a piece of shit. So, there's a lot of work to it. It's not as easy as what people think it is. And if you're a painter like I am, I do a lot of custom paint and interior. You can find my stuff on Simvation under Jet Ranger. Just type in the search Jet Ranger, and up will come all kinds of interior paints. I repaint interiors. I got pretty good at it. Took me 2 years to learn how to do it, but I got pretty good at it. A lot of Coronado interiors and some Captain Sim and that freeware Lockheed 188 that came out in 2004. Repainted all those interiors. But leave a comment, leave your opinion. Rather lengthy rant, but if you're somebody, a developer like PMDG or Coronado Albeo, commercial level simulations, Lionheart Creations, or any freeware developer, what's your take on this? Where do you think we're headed? I mean, compared to where we've been, now everything we got's going to be rendered useless if we switch over. What's to keep them from switching over again in 3 to 5 years and rendering everything we've got now useless? That's my point. And let's not forget the expense and the time it takes, not only for you developers to develop this stuff and the expense you have to go through buying the software to do it, but the time it takes, only to find out everything you did was not going to be, probably won't be downloaded as much anymore, and it won't be liked. I mean, there for a while we were having files that were 5 and 10 years old still being used and still getting hits, and whoever did the work to it did a good job. But now with Pre-Par 3D version 4, a lot of the stuff you just aren't going to be able to use all that stuff. So it's kind of rendered it useless. I'm just worried about the future. What's to render down the road? What we have now, render it useless because it could roll out a new version. I see it repeating itself and repeating itself and repeating itself over and over, and we just keep falling for it. I can't afford to keep falling for it, or I'm going to have to give up this hobby. And I had a lot of time and a lot of effort put in this hobby, and I hate to give it up, but I'm about there. I am just about there. So if you're a developer, whether you're a payware developer, a freeware developer, if you're a sim pilot who's been sim piloting for quite some time like I have, leave a comment, leave an opinion, leave a rant to my video. I don't care what you do. I just wanted to throw this out there to give everybody something to think about, because we're going to see a big drop off in flight simming, I'm afraid, and it's going to affect a lot of developers, both payware and freeware, and I just see the future of flight simming not being as bright as it used to be. Leave a comment below. Thank you. So let me read to you what PC Pilot magazine published by this Robert Randazzo, who is the CEO of PMDG, about Pre-Par 3D version 4. And this was published in June 21st of 2017. And what he has to say is pretty important. The following text is an extract from a post Robert Randazzo posted on AbSim in the forums. I'm not going to click on the full article, but with the advent of Pre-Par 3D version 4, many of us are breathing a sigh of relief that we can finally get back to flying full flights without the risk of the machine running out of memory, OEM, during final approach phase of flight. As hard as it is to believe, there are a whole generation of simmers, I'm one of them, I've been flight simming since 2002, who have never had this level of freedom, but those of us who have been at this since the early 80s can tell you that we are finally back to the good old days. I don't know that there were any really good old days. With that, I think is important to have a brief discussion of basic survival skills because our support team is beginning to see some really weird stuff taking place with pre-PAR 3D version 4. And nearly all of it is user-induced, and I'll agree with that to a degree. We really want you to avoid these pitfalls so that you can enjoy the new stable, smooth simulation without having to waste time sorting out what screwed up my sim now. And a lot of what he said there in that paragraph is very true. I've been saying it for years. Too many people are injecting crap into their sim, whatever sim they have, that isn't meant for their sim, causing issues and ending up on the forum boards asking questions and getting quite miffed trying to figure out their stuff, and they get 100 different answers and none of them is really right for the question because they're not forthcoming with their information. Things you must stop and consider. Pre-PAR 3D version 4 is stable. It is probably one of the more stable flight simulation releases we have seen in years. Pre-PAR 3D version 4 is not version 3. I'm going to say it again. Pre-PAR 3D version 4 is not version 3. Version 4 is 64-bit. Version 3 is 32-bit. Big difference. In case you didn't know the difference, that is the difference. Pre-PAR 3D version 4 is 64-bit. Version 3, version 2, and version 1 is still 32-bit. It is not FSX. It is not FSX Steam. And I know how X-Plane users hate being left out, blah, blah, blah. With those things considered, here are some rules to live by. And this is very important for all you simmers out there. Because a lot of you just take things off the cuff and you don't research and read and comprehend and you just assume. And that word assume with parentheses around it, that you can just inject into pre-PAR 3D version 4 what you had in FSX or pre-PAR version 1, version 2, version 3, and you cannot. And that's going to be a problem because now there's no more support for FSX or pre-PAR version 1, version 2, version 3. Most developers have already stopped support for those previous versions. Both scenery developers and aircraft developers and software developers. Do not install aircraft, scenery, utilities into pre-PAR 3D version 4 that were not, and he should have put that in capital letters with parentheses around it, not designed using the pre-PAR 3D version 4 SDK. Reread that sentence. It is important, and I'm going to. Do not install aircraft, scenery, utilities into pre-PAR 3D version 4 that were originally not designed, using the pre-PAR 3D version 4 SDK. In other words, don't try to be stick aircraft, scenery, and utilities and other software into Pre-Par 3D version 4 that were originally designed for the FSX boxed version, or Pre-Par 3D version 1, version 2, or version 3. Do not try to inject those into Pre-Par 3D version 4 and think you're not going to have problems. Do not force Pre-Par 3D version 4. We'll say it again. Do not force Pre-Par 3D version 4 to utilize scenery that you previously had installed for Pre-Par 3D version 3, 2, 1, FSX, or FSX Steam. Or yes, XPL, in other words, Exploit. Do not use utilities designed to allow you to unify your installations by feeding non-Pre-Par 3D version 4 scenery and utilities into Pre-Par 3D version 4. Again, let's stop right here. Pre-Par 3D version 4 is 64-bit. All the previous versions of Pre-Par 3D version 1, 2, 3, and FSX and Steam are based on 32-bit. The most important piece of knowledge you can have to maintain stability of Pre-Par 3D version 4 are as follows. So let's get into that. Before you install anything, this is where I'm at. Before you install anything into Pre-Par 3D version 4, you should take the time to research, not assume, but research and investigate whether the developer merely adjusted their installer to account for Pre-Par 3D version 4, or whether the developer actually took the time to re-export both the code elements and the model elements of a product using the developer SDK tools that were provided by Lockheed Martin for use with Pre-Par 3D version 4. That's a pretty important paragraph right there. Try to stop the YouTube video and read it, because what I got highlighted right there is pretty damned important. Otherwise, you're going to have a ton of problems with Pre-Par 3D version 4. That is, until they come out with Pre-Par 3D version 7, 8, or 9, and I don't know what's going to happen then. Who knows? This is what I'm worried about. All these updates. This sounds rather pernickety, but if you follow the guides above, you will have a largely problem-free experience with Pre-Par 3D version 4. If you would like to know more information on the how and why of these recommendations, please continue reading. Otherwise, simply follow the above guidance and you should be good to go. Lockheed Martin provided guidance to developers via their Software Developers Kit, SDK for short, that explains very specifically that all code elements and modeling elements used within Pre-Par 3D version 4 should be exported using the SDK tools that ship with the Pre-Par 3D kit. This means that simply moving an FSX or Pre-Par 3D version 3, 2, or 1 scenery into Pre-Par 3D version 4 will put your simulator at risk of becoming unstable or working irregularly. Airplanes generally aren't a drag and drop factor here because they need to be recompiled in x64. Read this deal again. Read this highlighted area I've got here. You need to read it. Lockheed Martin has provided guidance to developers via their Software Developers Kit, that explains very specifically that all code elements and modeling elements used within Prepar 3D version 4 should be exported using the SDK tools that ship with Prepar 3D. This means that simply moving an FSX Prepar 3D v3 scenery into Prepar 3D version 4 will put your simulator at risk of becoming unstable or working irregularly. Airplanes generally aren't a drag and drop factor here because they need to be recompiled in x64. With this in mind, it is incumbent upon developers, both payware and freeware, to not simply rewrap existing products to make them installable within Prepar 3D version 4 environment, without also taking the time to re-export the code and model elements using the Prepar 3D version 4 software development kit tools. If a developer simply updates their installer to allow you to install in the Prepar 3D version 4 environment without also taking the time to re-export the code and model elements, your sim is at risk of becoming unstable, just as if you had drag and dropped a non-Prepar 3D version 4 product. I highlighted it. You need to read it. Tools that allow users to alias, port over, older Prepar 3D version 3.2.1, FSX, FX Steam, scenery, and utilities into Prepar 3D version 4 are a surefire way to make your simulator unstable. So, guys, I don't know what it's going to be when it gets to Prepar 3D version 7, 8, 9, and 10. We have found that our technical support team is able to clear a significant number of crash to desktop issues, CTD, within Prepar 3D version 4 by simply removing aliased and non-compliant scenery and utilities that were not designed for Prepar 3D version 4. Developers within the flight simming community have enjoyed relatively straightforward portability, portovers, of products between FSX, FSX Steam Edition, and Prepar 3D for a number of years. That portability, or portovers, has been beneficial to customers, but has served to mask the fact that Microsoft Flight Simulator Origin product lines are growing more and more distant. In other words, they're getting old as the years go by, all those former aircraft and sceneries and utilities, and need to be treated individually by developers. Yes, it is getting old, almost 20 years old now. Developers cannot simply shoehorn products developed for FSX, FSX Steam, and Prepar 3D version 3, 2, and 1 into Prepar 3D version 4, but should instead treat the transition to Prepar 3D version 4 seriously, and he should have put parentheses around that. Exporting new code and model elements as recommended by Lockheed Martin in order to ensure the stability of the platform for all users and developers. Users need to be mindful, in other words, sim pilots, flight simmers, mindful that Prepar 3D version 4 is a unique platform, and just because an old favorite scenery will load in your simulator does not mean that it will run without undesired side effects. Read that again. Users need to be mindful that Prepar 3D version 4 is a unique platform and just because an old favorite scenery will load does not mean that it will run without undesired side effects, consequences. So I will take and post a link to this article below the video, both below in the description and in the comments section, so you can click on it and read it for yourselves. But this is what I'm getting at. It's working great now. I don't know what's going to happen when we get to another version in 3 to 5 years.
On the ILS 48.
Eagle Flight 780, Boston Tower, good afternoon. Wind 110 at 9er, runway 4, right, clear to land. And your choice of 33 left or Romeo. That's are the only two choices to exit, 33 left or Romeo.
Okay, 33 left or Romeo, free to Flight 780. We are clear to land.
Comment 414, contact ground point nine. Have a good afternoon.
Good day, Comment 414. 2 back to Milton.
Jazz 7960, Boston Tower, good afternoon. Wind 110 at 9er. Runway 4, right, clear to land. Plan to exit on taxiway Romeo.
Okay, clear to land, 4 right, planned exit on Romeo, Jazz 7960.
Wisconsin 3603, turn left on Romeo and contact ground point nine. Good afternoon.
That's the Romeo ground point nine, Wisconsin 3603, yes.
Yes, sir, 2127, Boston Tower, good afternoon. Runway 9er, position.